two parents, 6 kids, 1 dog, a camper named Ruby, and a car named The Beast. Distance learning across the USA and interviewing interesting people we meet along the way. This is the Ruby Road Stage Tour Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Ruby Road Stage Tour Podcast, where we interview interesting people we meet along the way as we follow our road across the USA. My name is Carmen Ventrucci, and I am here today with one of my dear friends, the one, the only, Jan Ashford. So my family actually met Jan when we were in Colorado. She was gracious enough to welcome us into her home, and we had so much fun with her and her 2 kids. Jan and I are actually former colleagues. We used to work together back in the day, and we have stayed in touch ever since. Jan is my go-to girl for anything sales related. If I have a sales question, Jan is the first person I call. She is a wealth of knowledge on all sorts of topics, and I can't wait to see what she brings for us to discuss today. So, Jan, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me on your podcast. I'm super excited.
Me too. So, Jan, the stage is yours. What do you want to talk about today?
That's a scary thing to give me a stage because I love to perform and I love to talk about lots of different topics. So when I saw that I could kind of pick whatever I wanted, the one thing that kind of kept resonating with me over and over again was my ability to take risk.
Okay.
And kind of talk to, I understand kind of who your audience is, and I've listened to your podcast before and listened to your interviewees, and I think maybe talking about my lack of risk aversion might be something fun for us to discuss.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody put it like that, my lack of risk aversion. I like that. So what does that mean to you? Tell me about your lack of risk aversion.
Sure. So throughout the course of my life, people have told me I'm crazy for all the things that I decide that I'm going to do. I am one of those people that really believes in taking time to think about what it is I'm going to do. But then once I make a decision, it is very difficult to change my mind from whatever that decision was. One of my favorite song lyrics is "Decide what to be and go be it." And that's what I do. I decide something and then I go do it, or I go be it. And I've been doing that like my whole life. So to kind of give you some perspective, like we can start with my goodness. In high school, I was a junior in high school. I had only ever attended parochial school, private parochial school. And my junior year, I went to my parents, like not the beginning of the year, mind you. This is like January or February of my junior year of high school. And I said to my parents, you know what? I'm going to go to public school. I want you to send me to public school. And they were like, why? Why would you do that now? You're going to graduate next year. Like, what would you, you're in school plays, you get to be the, on stage for, your senior performance, all this stuff. Why would you do that? And I said, well, I have never gone to school with a poor person before. School I went to was very rich. I had never gone to school with somebody with brown skin before. I had never experienced other people other than my bubble. And I said to my parents, I want to go and experience that before I choose a college or before I choose what I want to do in this world, because my bubble's too small. And so I did. My parents let me. I wound up going to public school that March, actually, and graduated at a public school. And not only did my grades go up, but I met one of my best friends, Fallon, who's still one of my best friends today. But I went to school with people who were less fortunate than I was, that did have different color skins, and were part of the LGBT community that I didn't see in parochial school. It was really eye-opening for me, and it was one of the best decisions I had made. But again, people looked at me and said, "You're crazy. Why would you do that?"
Right. You had a few questions on that one. Gotcha.
Oh, yeah.
So, so in this case in particular, was it a gut feeling? Was it a gut feeling? Was it intuition? What made you say, I need to go change my environment?
Sure. So it's interesting because as I think about a few of the different stories that I'm hoping we get to today, um, my gut or my intuition is definitely part of almost every single one of these choices in my life. Um, and so, yeah, there was just something in me that said, you need to go do this. And so I did.
Wonderful. And so, where else has this following your gut and following your intuition and your complete lack of risk aversion, where else has this taken you?
So I'll never forget the day when I was 23 years old. I was traveling for my job all over the country. It was super fun. I worked in the car industry. And I came home and I'll never forget this. My mother's floating in our swimming pool, just like lounging, having a great, hot July day. And I said, "Hey, mom, I'm pregnant." To say that she was surprised is an understatement. She basically fell off a raft and came out and we talked about it. And so I got pregnant when I was 23 and was not in a long-term committed relationship. And something said, "You've always wanted to be a mom. You've been working and saving. Now's your time to go do this." And so I could have chosen to terminate my pregnancy. It was very early on. I could have chosen to keep the pregnancy and put a baby up for adoption. I could have done a lot of different things, but I chose to raise my son, Jack, who is going to be 13 in March. And I'm giving away my age. Darn it. Quick math, folks. So yeah, I chose to be a mom. And again, people told me I was crazy. People said, "You have no home other than your parents. You have no long-term work. You're working as a contractor. Um, you're young. You don't have the support of a partner. You're crazy." And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm doing this. This is something that innately I knew that I could do and wanted to do, and I did."
And I know your son, Jack. I adore your son, Jack. He is one of the best kids I've encountered. So you are doing a good job being Jack's mom and being Juno's mom. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. But yeah, I've always felt like I've done a great job.
Mhm.
Um, but again, it was one of those things where it's like people told me you don't have to do this,
Mhm.
and I did. So
So, Jan, when people tell you you're crazy, when you hear those words or whatever form of the words people are choosing, is that a trigger for you that maybe you're on the right track?
that's a great question. Because I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of mindset work. I have for a long time, and I have found that typically when people are talking to me like that, it's because they couldn't see themselves doing it, or they have a genuine fear of me failing, which means to me that if they like, let's say it's a close family or friend, right? And they say, "You're crazy, don't do this." It's because they don't want to see me fail. It's because they care about me. But in my world, if I'm not taking a risk, I'm not giving myself an opportunity to leap, I'm playing it safe, then I'm not growing. And so I see a lot of things in terms of risk and taking chances as a way for me to grow and learn, either by doing well or learning by falling forward. Right. And so maybe it is a trigger for me to say, wow, this is something big to other people, even though it doesn't necessarily feel big to me.
That makes sense. For you, it's about being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and that failing forward fast. I mean, how our mind works, there's never failure, there's only feedback. And so you're choosing to position those failures as feedback so you can do it better the next time. And that's one of the reasons why you have a lack of risk aversion is because you don't see it as risk, you see it as a lesson.
I do, and I feel like not only is it the lesson, but it's also the what if I don't do this? What is the repercussions of not taking the risk?
Yeah, the cost of
What
inaction can be as great as the cost of action.
Absolutely. And so I'm going to tell you a couple more stories as it relates to work and travel, which you've actually known me during in my life,
Yes, I have.
which is funny because of the phone call that I made to you
Mhm.
before you took your trip, which was don't do it.
I remember that phone call.
So, I mean, we might as well talk about that real quick.
Mhm.
So I'll tell the listeners, I was when Carmen told me that she was going to rent out her home and buy an RV and take 6 children and a husband and a dog all over the country during a global pandemic. I called up my friend and I said, "You're crazy," basically,
Yep.
which is very funny. But again, kind of what I just said, coming from that place of I care about you. I'm thinking you and Drew are going to be in the hospital somewhere. How do you take care of your children if you get COVID? Like that was my mindset in that moment, and I wanted to know that you thought about that.
Mhm.
Um but then, to see you and the kids here visiting us, the wonderful experiences, following your YouTube channel and listening to these kids talk about all the wonderful experiences that they're having, you know, I- wow, talk about worth it. Talk about everything. Exactly what I'm saying, right? The cost of you staying home with the 6 of you stuck in a house versus experiencing the world. The cost of inaction, I think, would have been really great.
Mhm. And I'm really glad. I kind of forgot about this story a little bit. I'm really glad you're bringing it up because in that moment when you were telling me I was crazy, I knew you were coming from a place of love. It's not that you didn't want to see me in the hospital. You didn't want this trip to be a failure. You wanted to know, did I have my poop in a group essentially to make sure I was making the right decision? And because I know you well enough, I knew that was what you were really saying. And so a lot of times when we have, especially those close friends and those close family members telling us we're crazy or that we shouldn't do something, it's advisable to maybe take a breath, take a beat, and think about what is the intention behind their message. Are they trying to keep us safe and protect us? Because chances are it's not that they don't want us to succeed, they want us to be a wild success. They just want to make sure we've thought this through.
Versus other people out there that could be trying to stifle our
Yes.
success, which I definitely have experience
Oh
with as
yes,
well.
absolutely, absolutely. You have to understand where who the message is coming from. What is the intention behind it? Because you are right. Some people out there just don't want to see you succeed at all.
Oh yeah, especially like in work and things like that, taking
Yes.
risks for that type of success. And so what's really funny to me is the timing of of your trip happens to be on the piggyback of me coming back to Colorado. So why don't I share with everybody real quick how I wound up in Colorado not once but twice. So I'm originally from the northeastern part of Pennsylvania. I grew up in the city of Wilkes-Barre. And for those of you who don't know where Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania is, it's about 20 minutes south of Scranton. Yes, Scranton, as in the office and the childhood home of Joe Biden, which is, I guess, the two things that is most now known for. And so I, back in, oh gosh, I don't even know what year it was. 2013, I think 2013, late 2013. Um, we were still in the thick of the recession from, the housing bubble and everything like that. Northeast PA still has not fully recovered from that recession. Um, the crime was out of control. I could not find a job that would pay me what I was worth, and my son was in kindergarten. And I wanted to keep him in a Montessori school, and I wanted to get a new job and live in a place that had more opportunity. Okay, this is going to sound crazy. So I researched Montessori schools that were charter schools in different states that had lottery systems. I found 13 different schools in 13 different cities across the country, and I numbered them 1 through 13 of where I would most likely want to live. And I applied as an out of state resident for all 13 of these Montessori charter schools. Guess how many Jack got into? One.
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 Not only did he get into only one, he got into my number one pick, which was in Golden, Colorado.
Wow.
So it felt like that was a sign. Like, okay, the one that you listed as number one of where you would want to go is where he got into school. So what I did was I secured his spot and I started to apply for jobs. I came out to Colorado in April of 2014 and we toured the school and Jack got to see everything. And I was getting ready to leave and get back on a plane when actually our former employer, where Carmen and I work together, calls me up and says, "Do you have time for an interview today?" And I said, "Well, I'm on my way back to the airport with a 5-year-old. So if you don't mind me with some suitcases and a kiddo, like, yeah, sure, I'll come for an interview." And so we met at Huckleberry Coffee Shop. I'll never forget this. And and Jack was there. He was part of my interview. I met with my district manager and the area vice president and got on a plane and left. Got long story short, got the job. Jack got into the school. By May 18th, I was fully employed in Colorado. And so I left Jack home with my mother and father, flew out to Colorado with a suitcase, and started my life here in Golden.
Wow. Talk about the universe lining up.
People thought I was crazy.
And you know what? It worked out because you knew that's where you needed to be.
A town that I visited for 2 days, but fell in love with.
Right.
The job lined up. The job lined up not only just a little, like really well in terms of what I wanted to do at that point in my career, and the money. The money was there. And so I did it.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what's funny. That Montessori school that Jack went to sucked. It was awful. It was terrible. Within like a couple weeks, he's like, "Mom, this school's terrible. It sucks. It's not what I'm used to, blah, blah, blah." And so I pulled him out and I put him into the local public school, which happens to be one of the best grade schools in the state of Colorado. And so he's still within that school district and he's getting a fabulous education and we're there. However, there's a little detour along the way. So should I tell everybody about our detour?
Oh, I love detours.
This was a very costly, very long detour.
Mm-hmm.
And so in case of listeners don't know about the housing market in the Denver metro area, at the point where I purchased my home in 2017 here, you literally had to put deposits down sight unseen in order to try to get a house. I mean, we put down, I want to say 20 bids on 20 different houses, or maybe 23. I think that was like the 23rd house that we tried to get. That's how aggressive it is, cash over asking, all this stuff. Finally found a house. I'm doing really well at work. I'm married at this point. I've got 2 kids now. Juno is she was born in 2016. And so we're in 2018 and my career has an opportunity to go to New England to grow my career. And with the same company that brought me to Colorado. And so again, being not too risk averse, and wanting to be a little bit closer back to family, especially since my kids were still young and they wanted to see grandparents in Pennsylvania and things like that. I sold my house that took me forever to buy in Golden, Colorado, the 2 weeks before Christmas, packed up, and we drove. And by January 5th, after spending the holidays in Pennsylvania, and January 5th, I moved into a house in New Hampshire. That was January 5th of 2019. By June 15th of 2019, I was back in Colorado.
Slight detour, short detour.
So I took that risk, and my intuition said I shouldn't have gone, that I shouldn't have done it. And I didn't listen. I listened to everybody who said, take the job. Go be closer to family. There's great schools there for the kids. Cost of living is lower. I listened to all of the reasons why I should. I never stopped to listen to myself as to why I shouldn't. And for me, it would have been riskier in that moment to actually stay.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't do it. So fast forward. So, to come back in June, I actually quit my job with the company that I had had for 5 years and got a new one. And I drove in 2 days. I left on a Monday, left my kids with my parents, drove on a Monday, got here on a Wednesday. Those 27 hours with just me and the dog in her truck. My mom flew out with the kids, and I haven't left since.
Wonderful. And I'm really glad you shared that story because this is a really good example of the feedback one can get from making a decision. Remember, it's not failure, it's only feedback. And so you learned that always remember to trust your gut and listen to your instinct. You learned that even if you get feedback you may not like, you can still turn it around and fix it. What else did you learn from that?
Where to stop and get coffee along Route 70? No.
They're really good coffee
I
spots.
learned that was my first time driving west of Manhattan, Kansas, and I
Okay.
never realized like how flat it was going to be. It was something. No, honestly, I often surprise myself with my own capabilities. Like I did not think that I could drive cross country alone. I really didn't. I thought that, you know, with all the stories that, your mother and your grandmother would tell you that, you got to be safe, you got to be careful, you're going to be a woman alone without a state plates at a rest area. And I, you know what? I did it and I'm so glad I did. That trip was so much fun. Um, I was leaving behind so much negativity,
Right.
so much anger.
Mhm.
I left a husband behind. We're now divorced. And so it was a very difficult, but yet very cathartic experience for me to do that. I mean, I got here and I had a pod full of stuff. See, talk about intuition. When I moved from Colorado to New Hampshire, we put all of our belongings in a pod in a storage unit
Okay.
that we were going to pay once we found the house that we were going to stay in New Hampshire. I never moved the pod.
So the pod stayed in Colorado this whole time.
I never moved it because I never felt like New Hampshire was going to be like, no matter how much I settled in, no matter how well I was doing at work, I received the promotions that I was hoping to get. I never moved the pod.
Wow.
So when I got back to Colorado, the good news was it was here, so I didn't have to move it twice. The difference is I had to empty it by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, all the things inside didn't even like matter anymore. It was a very interesting, strange experience. The whole,
Yes.
yeah.
What a personal journey. I think it's amazing. It is amazing.
Thanks for letting me share, it with all of your listeners. And
My pleasure.
I hope that, one takeaway for people is really listening to the voice inside of you. And when people do give you this feedback, where are they coming from when they're giving it to you? Is it a place of love? Is it a place of caring? Is it something you should or should not listen to? Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. When you're listening to that voice inside, listening for your intuition and that internal feedback, what if you don't like what it's saying?
So it's interesting that you bring that up. Sometimes we have to, I'm trying to figure out how to explain this. Basically, when I did not like what my intuition was saying, specifically about my marriage, I needed somebody else's guidance. I needed a non-biased opinion to help me through those types of emotions, right? Because your intuition's saying, don't do this or do this. In my case, it was, you shouldn't be doing this anymore. I needed to go talk to somebody. And so having either a friend, a support group, or in my case, going to a therapist really helped me understand, do I listen to this? And if I do, what are the repercussions on my life?
Gotcha. So just talking it out with that unbiased third party or a friend, unbiased friend, very useful.
Absolutely. Because intuition, especially if you follow your intuition, it's going to cause you pain or grief or heartache, or it's going to be difficult, it can be hard to follow. Having a baby alone was hard to do.
Right.
Moving was hard to do. Getting a divorce was hard to do. All of those things were worthwhile in my life.
Wonderful.
So sometimes you need that little nudge too.
Right. Yeah. Little nudge. Jan, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate this conversation. Tons of golden nuggets were dropped. So everybody, I know you got a lot of value out of this. Jan, where can people find more of you?
Thanks for asking. So talk about things that are going on in my life right now. I've followed some intuition recently. I am about to launch my new website along with the podcast. It's called Let's Make Purple. So if you go to letsmakepurple.com, or if you find Let's Make Purple on your favorite Spotify, Apple, however you get your podcasts, you can listen to me there. And that's the best way to find me. And it's Jan at letsmakepurple.com.
So what is Let's Make Purple all about?
So Let's Make Purple is all about healing America's partisan divide, one conversation at a time. So if you're really sick of partisan politics, like I know most of Americans and even outside America are, this is a cool place to come and find and listen to some conversations and hear some real life stories of people who are trying to make our country better.
Wonderful. I can't wait to listen to it. All right, Jan, thank you so much. Please be sure to tune in for our next episode of the Ruby Road Stage Podcast Tour. This is Carmen Ventrucci, and check us out at therubyroad.com and check out my business's website at truesisulife.com. You can see how I support my family while we travel the road in an RV across the USA. See you next time.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us on this episode of the Ruby Road. Make sure to click that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, and give us a thumbs up. Share it with your family and friends. Be part of our adventure. See you in the next episode. Bye.